The element of Bitcoin of FOMO, fear of missing out, has reached the nation state level and the sovereign wealth fund level, central bank level, and it's the same on that level as it is on any level. I think Warren Buffett said once that people are not that interested really in making money until their neighbor starts making money, all right? And then suddenly, it's keeping up with the Joneses. So the fact that a couple of countries are now stacking and showing great results as a result has triggered FOMO at the highest level.
At a recent Bitcoin Magazine event in Abu Dhabi, Max Keiser shared how El Salvador's first mover stance is reshaping Bitcoin's global narrative. With BlackRock's interest highlighting growing market conviction, Bitcoin is trading near $116,000, up 1% in 24 hours and 18% in 30 days. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share to stay updated on these transformative dynamics. Now let's hear from Max Keiser.
Center of global freedom for many years was the United States, and people yearned to breathe free, as it says on the Statue of Liberty. Well, the new Statue of Liberty now is a volcano in El Salvador. And the mindset that informed Americans into building the 20th century powerhouse that was the United States are now in El Salvador. And El Salvador is now the global leader in economic freedom, freedom of expression, and we see it reflected in the faces of the people who are optimistic and happy. And that's all due to the combination of Bitcoin plus Bukele, who is, as Stacy says, a Renaissance man, a once in 500-year leader. And the results are palpable. The results are obvious. On Keiser report, we speculated a few times with old G's like Trace Mayer and Tour de Meester, and we would discuss what nation state would be first in adopting Bitcoin, making it legal tender. El Salvador at that time, 5, 6, 7 years ago, was not mentioned, so it was a surprise when El Salvador was mentioned. And the fact that it's now 100,000 and going much higher, of course, it is fantastic for El Salvador. As far as the Renaissance goes and the history of money, I've come to the conclusion that money is essentially a shared aesthetic, and it goes back 1,000,000 years. And in the Renaissance, by having the best money of the time, it attracted the artists, because money is a shared aesthetic, and it is a thing of beauty that it is supporting. Jim Simons, who was one of the greatest money managers ever, recently passed away. He said his first rule of making money is appreciate beauty. And Bitcoin is the Sistine Chapel of money. It's the most aesthetically beautiful form of money. So it's no surprise now that in El Salvador, you see what's happening to the historic downtown center. It's becoming gorgeous. The new library is aesthetically beautiful. And there's a huge call to be your best. And it touches everybody in the country, and you can feel it. Well, like I said, President Bukele is a combination of like a Steve Jobs meets a JFK. And the Steve Jobs comparison is somebody who's incredibly focused on detail, as well as having a vision, an aesthetic vision. And so when we arrived in the late 2021, we had a chance to meet with the president, and we explained what we thought the country should do. And he suggested we move there and be advisors. So that's what we did. But he was already completely on board. I believe he first mentioned Bitcoin in 2017. He was tweeting about it. And so he already was orange pilled, really. We didn't have any orange pilling to do. But the question of how to bring that to the nation state level, that was a question that needed to be solved. Demographically, it's a lot harder to teach boomers about Bitcoin than it is kids. Older people tend to project their own incapability of learning new things onto kids, thinking like, well, if I can't get it, this kid can't get it. But of course, it's the opposite. Kids are open-minded, and they sense intuitively some of the aesthetic qualities of Bitcoin that I talked about, even though maybe they can't articulate it. They are still in tune with the nature to a greater degree than a cynical old bastard like myself. So I would say it's the opposite.
Max Keiser highlights El Salvador's trailblazing role and how endorsements from major players like BlackRock boost Bitcoin's global legitimacy. Hear his insights on turning these signals into long-term strategies.
When I did a .com company in Los Angeles back in the late 90s, and we got a huge investment from NBC, the media company. And I asked one of the executives, why did you invest in my company? And he said, to tell you the truth, I don't know, but I don't want to miss it. And that was the mentality at that time. So we've entered that phase of the cycle where people are just going to be writing enormous checks because they don't want to miss it. And we'll take the money. Yeah, Bitcoin demonetizes violence. And this is in part of why the security model in El Salvador has been so successful, because the mindset of Bitcoin is a demonetization of violence. It monetizes peace and love. And the hardest thing about Bitcoin adoption on the sovereign level is to keep out everything else, because every single thing else out there that might get into your country and start mucking about dilutes the brand value, it dilutes the impact of Bitcoin, and you will delay achieving what you can achieve if you are Bitcoin only, Bitcoin maximalist. And this is something that we've done at the Bitcoin office that has been probably the most challenging aspect of the role, is to create that moat, create that perimeter. You know, during the whole Celsius period and FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, none of that stink got into El Salvador. Not a single person suffered from all of that hellacious shitcoining, because we made it a point to make sure that the people of El Salvador were protected from that. Yeah, the El Salvador success, there's actually a playbook that you can follow. There were 5 or 6 key steps that were taken. And we don't, in 25 seconds, we don't have time to review them, but it's an actual step-by-step guide to achieving the same type of success. And I recommend any country that wants to compete with El Salvador on the stage of global excellence to study the playbook.
Watch the full interview through the link in the description. Thriving in this evolving landscape means embracing global momentum, understanding the catalyst behind Bitcoin's rise, and rethinking your strategy. We'd love your thoughts. How are you adapting as institutions validate Bitcoin's role? What perspectives keep you grounded as Bitcoin's narrative shifts globally? Thanks for watching. If you found this valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into decentralized technologies.